Well, hi there, and welcome to Home Wizards. I'm Cindy Dole.
I'm Eric Stromer.
And I want a little water. I'd like some water, please.
I don't blame you.
Outside.
You mean the...
I want a little trickle. Is that asking too much?
It's not, and it's gotten to the point where my dad is like, or my son Wyatt is like,
Oh, no.
Dad, like I bring friends over. It's like we live in a fountain store. What's the deal here? Everywhere I go, there's the sound of water. But I love it. I love that sound. It makes me feel okay. And doggone it, I pay the bills.
See, exactly. I think it's totally therapeutic.
I agree.
And I'd like you to help us because maybe for those of us who don't have very much space, very much yard. Maybe all we have is a little balcony, or maybe we have, plenty of space, but there's that little nook where we'd love to have that little accent piece.
You just want to have a little something.
A little
water feature is what they call it. And I'll tell you, it's a congregating area, and it makes people gather around and hang out and relax, and I love it. And worst case scenario, it makes everyone have to go to the restroom. Is that so bad? I think
And
not.
I think it lowers blood pressure.
I agree.
I think it makes people feel happy.
I agree.
Yeah.
So anyway, conceptually, let me just tell you about what the deal is with these water fountains. Generally, it's going to be some sort of a container, and then within the container, it'll be a sealed system so that on the bottom, there'll be a pump that will either shoot water up and out, so you get the lovely, the sprinkler coming up out of the water and then coming back down on it, or that pump is going to take that water to yet another destination, maybe a second or a third pump if you're going to do a multiple tier situation where water gets pumped to a top vessel and then drains down to a second or third one and then into the collection basin, essentially, right?
Sounds fancy.
Yeah, so basically all it is a closed system with a pump in it, right? So it can be done with anything you can imagine. It can be, I've seen them done with water cans. I've seen them done with beautiful, vases or pots or
wine bottles.
Anything that could be a container can become a fountain, right? Mm-hmm. And then the pumps themselves range in intensity. So you've got really small little tiny pumps that are maybe $15-$20
like aquarium pumps.
Exactly. They'll just give you a tiny little trickle, right?
Not good. I've tried that, and it's just you're all excited about doing your project, and then you buy the little aquarium pump for maybe $15-$20,
right,
and you come home and the water doesn't, and then there's not enough of the
tubing. It barely gets out of the water. It's like, come on, little fella, you can do it. You can come out and surge out of the water.
Or it looks like it's just this tube of water, like a fire hydrant.
And they do have, and so anyway, there's the small one like that, or then they get progressively larger so that they can literally make waterfalls in a mall environment, so it looks like you're in a roaring river or something, right? So they come in huge variation in terms of intensity. And then within the pump themselves, depending on the size, there are little dials that you can adjust the intensity of the water flow as it comes out of it. So you have to determine the amount of water that you need to move, right? So for example, if you have, let's say, a 24-inch pot that you want to turn into a fountain, you're probably going to want to get a pump that's they sell them, they're the size of like a deck of cards, and they're about 3 or 4 inches deep, right? It's about that size. And they'll give you a water gallon it's like a per gallon flow ratio that will kind of tell you, you want to
on the label itself.
On the label itself, it'll tell you. So if you have a container this big, you need this pump, right? So anyway,
always go bigger than
I think always go bigger because you can restrict the flow by either pinching off the hose a little bit and putting a clamp on it, or diverting the flow with for example, I have a fountain in my house, one of my 300 fountains, where you can the water comes out of the top of it and then cascades down around the stone on the top, right? So I've got the lovely thing that you made me, the little terrarium with succulents on top of the thing where the water would come out of the little hole on the top. So it disperses it, and there's less intensity. If I take that thing off, the water literally shoots up 2 feet into the air.
Right. We don't like that.
We don't like it. But with this thing that I've done, because of that beautiful terrarium you made me,
it
just kind of slows it down. So again, go bigger on your pump and then obscure it with some sort of a thing that keeps the water from rushing quite so fast, and I think you're better off. And I think they're better apt to deal with all the debris that can sometimes fall in the fountain themselves and kind of clog up those things. So you want to make sure to go just a tiny bit bigger.
And the thing that has been a challenge for me is the tubing. Because after you get the pump, then the tube doesn't necessarily fit the end of
it doesn't.
Little, what do you call that, receptacle
Well,
thing?
and they make it slightly undersized for a reason, and that's so that it won't come off when the pressure of the water goes through it. But to get it on, you've got to heat it up a little bit. So I often will recommend that you just roll it between your two palms for about 5 minutes to soften the plastic up a bit, and then twist it onto the little nozzle that comes out of the pump, and it'll be a little bit easier. Sometimes also you can light a lighter under it and just rotate it a couple of turns. It'll soften it just slightly, warm it up, and then it'll, expand. You can put it on, then it'll contract as it gets colder.
Right.
So anyway, there are other ways to do that too. Sometimes you can get the hoses that are just a little too big and they don't fit quite perfectly, and they sell these little clamps that you can buy in the plumbing department that look like bands with a screw on it, so when you turn the screw, the band tightens.
I think we use that for our hose.
Exactly. Yeah. So those are universal kinds of parts to kind of restrict cylinders, and put things tight around something that's cylindrical.
Because if it's too narrow, if it's almost like a straw, this little tube that comes up, then the fountain looks lame.
The fountain looks like it looks
lame.
Terrible. It's horrible. What is that? You call that a fountain? That's what you get when people come over, right?
It's a spigot.
Yeah. So you definitely want to play around and experiment with the size of the hose, the size of the pump. And there's going to be some futzing around once you construct this thing. So let me talk about the closed system first. So you get your vessel, let's say it's a 24-inch traditional clay terracotta pot. You have to put waterproofing stuff on the inside of those pots because water will absorb and ultimately leak and evaporate much faster.
And there's a hole in it, probably.
And there's a hole at the bottom for drainage, which we love when we plant our plants.
But not for this.
It's
so what are we going to do? How are we going to get the...
Well, I'm glad you asked that. So you're going to run your cord through that hole for the pump, right?
Okay.
And you'll probably have to take the end off of it and then reattach it once you run the cord through the hole so that you can then, plug it into an outlet. But then you've got the problem of the cord going through that hole, and obviously it needs to be filled up. So what you do is you just take some cement, mix up some cement, and then just fill that hole in the bottom with the cord encapsulated around it.
Oh, wait, hold the thought.
There's so much to talk about. How can we have a commercial now? Are you kidding me?
Oh, it's not really that. We're going to continue to talk because we want to get through making an urn, like one of those beautiful, like shimmering over the sides.
You're going to go crazy
fountain.
When you have it.
I love it.
I can't wait.
Bringing water to your world, that's the name of the game here. Home Wizards, Eric Stromer, Cindy Dole. We love to improve your home and improve your life.
Yeah, she could hear the cars roll by. Barbers soaking up that hot sunshine. As good as it gets.
Welcome back. You're listening to Home Wizards. I'm Cindy Dole.
And I'm Eric Stromer.
And Eric is just getting to the good part about how we can build our own waterfall and fountain.
Yes.
So continues. You were saying.
Okay. So anyway, you've got this
terracotta pot.
You've got this closed system. You've got a terracotta pot.
But it has a hole in it.
It's got a hole in it. You've already put your plug through the hole, and you may have had to take the end of the plug off and then re-spliced it on the other side.
Hang on. If people would miss that part, tell us again about the plug.
So I was going to get to that. Anyway, the pump has to sit at the bottom of this terracotta pot, propped up on a couple of bricks, and then the cord has got to go out of the bottom where the hole is. Now, if you can't get the end of the cord through the hole, you might have to cut the cord, feed the wire through, and then reattach the cord plug end on the other side of the hole.
So you need the hole initially.
Yes, to get the plug through, right?
So what? Okay.
And then you plug that hole with cement, quick drying cement, and then you let it set up thoroughly. And then, after it's been waterproofed, you got to either do some kind of a Henry's waterproofing on the interior of that terracotta pot, or you can use any kind of masonry sealer that you can find out there in the big box store. Let that dry, and then it's completely waterproof and ready to fill with water. And once you do
Henry's waterproof?
Henry's it's like a roofing compound. It's a waterproofing thing that you can. It's like a black gel,
like a tar,
almost like a tar, exactly. Oh. And then you let that dry, and then that can be filled with water and used as a vessel. And then once you have the fountain sitting there in the bottom on top of the bricks with the water in it, you can either run a tube up to the surface with a little spritzer to give you that, Busby Berkeley kind of a look where it's just flopping around. You can just picture people in a swimming pool doing kicks, simultaneously. Or that hose can then go up to yet another water thing above it. So that it's got that cascading feel, right? So then once you've got the main vessel or the basin, as we're going to call it.
Sky's the limit.
Sky's the limit. You could run 50 other buckets on top of it and have the water cascade down into the collection basin.
Very cute.
But the good news is that, the essential thing you have to remember is that the collection vessel has to be the biggest most voluminous container. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Because that's at the end game. That's where the water goes and sucks back up to the very top. That's the reservoir. So that has to be bigger than the one at the top. Now, let's talk about the kind of fountain where it comes up and bubbles over like
it's an urn,
an ancient Greek urn, and it's coming down around.
Well, you mean the disappearing fountain?
Well, that's exactly what I mean.
And it just kind of shimmers.
Over the edge of the urn as it's dripping into the bottom and going into the rocks, into the ground. And where does the water go?
It just recycles.
No, it's an eternal spring from Rome. But really, where does it go? I'll tell you. It goes
an eternal spring from Rome.
It goes into again a collection basin, and here's how you do that. So basically, that looks like this. It's a collection basin that's buried under the ground, and then you're going to put a couple of bricks again to prop up your pump, right? And then there's going to be a plastic grate over that.
And why the plastic grate?
Because then you're going to put pebble rocks that are larger than the grate themselves on top of that grate
for this little fancy look.
So it looks like it's just disappearing into the ground. And then the pot or the urn will sit on top of that. And as the water cascades down and drips essentially into the ground, it's being recollected in that collection basin underneath those rocks, and then feeding back up into the pump again.
So how do we create a collection basin?
I'll tell you.
Okay.
You're gonna go ahead and find one of these.
Because that's outside the urn. The urn
that's on the inside. That's under the ground. Under the ground. So
under the grate.
Yes, exactly. Right. So you're gonna dig a hole down to fit a collection basin, which will probably be 8 inches deep, like a black tub. You can buy them at any of the big box stores.
Oh, like
they're preformed.
Like in the pond supply area.
There you go.
Okay.
Exactly. And they're probably 8 inches deep to 10 inches deep, and they can come in any width that you can imagine.
Okay.
Let's say, for our purposes, 2 foot by 2 foot.
Okay.
So you're going to dig a hole to have that sit down at ground level.
And it's just a little tub.
It's just a tub sitting in the ground, right? And then you're going to go ahead and put a couple of bricks in that, and then on top of that, you'll put your pump, and then on top of that, you'll have that plastic grate, right?
Right.
So, and you just want the pump sitting up off the tub bottom. It can be done with anything. It doesn't have to be bricks. It could be something a little bit lower, a lower piece of rock or something, just to get it up off the basin's bottom, right?
And why is that? Just operates
better? Because then
better?
There's water flow that goes underneath
and it's not choking.
And it won't sit in debris that collects on the bottom and then plugs up that pump.
Wouldn't that make you angry after you went to all this work? Oh my gosh.
But the good news is that those aren't that easy to, they're not that difficult to clean once you understand the system. So the pump is inside the basin, which is buried in the ground. And then you're doing the exact same thing with having the hole drilled on the bottom of the ancient Greek vessel or urn that you have.
You have to have a hole.
The cord is then going to, now from the pump inside that basin, you're going to have the hose, that tubing that goes into the bottom of the Greek vessel.
Right.
And then again, you're going to fill that hole in the bottom of the Greek vessel with cement that's quick drying. So that's waterproof also. And then that tube just goes up and sits in that vessel, and it's just free flowing inside there. It doesn't matter if it's attached or not, because all it's doing is filling that thing up with water until it overflows, cascades over the top of the vessel, back down into the collection basin that's covered with rocks, so it looks like the urn is sitting right on top of the ground. And what does it look like? An eternal spring from Greece. So it's a closed system that keeps on going over and over and over again. So if that does get full of debris and clog up a bit, you just disassemble it by lifting that urn off, taking the grate up, cleaning that water out, just using a little cup or sponge, cleaning it out, getting all the debris from the bottom, and then it'll be sure to flow again. And there's maintenance involved in all these fountains. Don't forget, once you set it up, like I literally am spending at least a day a week going back into these fountains, pulling out the pump, cleaning it out, hosing it off, getting that old water out, and refilling it with new fresh water. So, and also if it's under a tree,
right, the leaves
are always going to fall on it, and that could be some issue.
Well, it's like anything, it's like your car. There's a little bit of maintenance.
There's a little bit of maintenance.
I have a question because we need an electric outlet.
You do, and that has to be a GFI outlet.
Has to be that. And here's been my pickle: is that frequently the pump that you get, the cord is like maybe barely 12 inches long. Right? What's up with that?
Well, I think it's a liability thing because they don't want to have these cords exceed too far of a distance because it could turn into a fire issue.
Okay.
But for the most part, what you're going to end up doing is running an extension cord from the end of that
a waterproof
plug. An outdoor cord that has a larger
because
gauge.
you're not I mean, you're going to barely get it from the fountain to the you're not going to get it to the outlet.
Well, see, that's the thing. And then to install an outdoor switch, you have to most of the time dig 18 inches below the ground and run plastic conduit with wire through it, and that's the way you're really supposed to do it.
I mean, you've done all this thing to create this disappearing Grecian urn that looks like it just is there in nature, and then now you've got this cord.
A bright orange outdoor extension cord. There's nothing ruins the look and feel.
So you've got to hide that.
I know, and that's definitely a consideration. and what you want to do too is when you have these GFIs installed, the reason you have those is because it's a ground fault interrupting switch, essentially, meaning that if there's a shock, it'll shut off the power to that switch instantly and prevent people from getting shocked or dying from electrocution, right? So it's imperative anytime you're around water, even in a bathroom or kitchen, wherever you have to reach your hand from your sink when you're doing dishes, that's where a GFI has to go. Because if you reach up there to plug something in, you have wet hands, that's when you can go bye-bye.
We don't want that to happen.
We don't want you to go bye-bye.
I want them to come up with an LED battery-operated pump for these disappearing fountains.
I don't blame you, because the cord is definitely an issue. But, that's the secret, and that's why these fountain guys and gals that install these for a living do it seamlessly. But once you learn how they do it, it's really not that big a deal. You just have to go through the process once, which is why I think I now have 19 fountains, because I've done this once and now I know how to do it pretty easily. So it's like, welcome to Eric's Fountain Store. Everybody come in. And you can't hear anyone talk in my house because the sound of water is so loud, right? It's hilarious. One friend of ours came in and said, "You guys frying chicken?" No, that's just another water fountain.
But it is. You make a good point.
Yeah.
Water fountains not only create a nice, relaxing atmosphere for you, but it does disguise a sound you don't want to hear.
Well, it disguises the sound of the Van Nuys Airport, which is the busiest residential airport in the world, I think, right by my house.
Yeah,
so it does help with the plane sound.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, I love this idea. I mean, I think that...
unfortunately, we all have to wear diapers walking around the house, but other than that, it's great.
It's a lifestyle. It's a choice. The bathroom isn't that far away.
Yeah.
But I do love the idea of how we have options with either using the terracotta pot or a lovely urn. There's so many beautiful urns out there.
Yes, there are. And there are also a tremendous amount of prefab, and I don't mean to diminish the way that they look by using the word prefab, but there are really great-looking fountains that sort of come in a box that you can set up on a countertop, and they work well, and they sound great.
You can practice with that, maybe,
Yeah.
Anyway, we'll put all this on the website, all the steps, because, we've got to get some water in our life, right? Eric Stromer, Cindy Dole. Now, we're just getting started because we have dozens more DIY outdoor projects that are just so easy. You're going to go, wait a minute, how come I don't have my own little table fire with that little gel?
You're going to have it next time we talk.
We're going to do it.
You're going to hear about it.
Eric Stromer, Cindy Dole. You're listening to Home Wizards.